The package arrived at our studio just before midnight, wrapped in wet black cloth that smelled like soil and burnt wood. It carried an antique map marked with trembling red ink and a warning note about a ledger that remembers screaming souls. None of us wanted to touch it at first because the handwriting looked like it was written under extreme terror. Our documentary channel was collapsing after months of failed paranormal investigations and staged ghost stories that never delivered results. Marcus believed this mysterious package could finally revive our audience and reputation overnight. I felt uneasy, but also strangely drawn to the promise of something real and dangerous. The drive toward Black Forest took nearly 8 hours through storm-heavy mountains and empty highways that felt abandoned by civilization. Towering pine trees surrounded the road, like watching silhouettes hiding something alive inside the darkness. Eleanor kept noticing strange carved symbols on poles that none of us could explain. We arrived at a small village near the forest just after sunset, when fog had already swallowed the streets. Shops were closed early, and every window looked barricaded, as if something outside was feared deeply. An old woman crossed herself repeatedly when we mentioned Black Forest. Marcus tried asking villagers about missing people connected to the forest, but every conversation ended in panic or silence. The moment he said the word ledger, people either ran away or refused to speak further. One man dropped everything and disappeared into his house without looking back. A local warned us that Black Forest listens after dark and remembers every name spoken near its borders. His shaking hands and pale face showed he was not exaggerating or joking at all. He whispered that the forest only returns what it chooses to release. We rented 2 small cabins near the forest edge from a man named Victor who refused eye contact completely. His hands trembled while giving us keys, as if he regretted ever agreeing to rent them. Before leaving, he said nobody who searches for the ledger ever returns the same. That night, thick fog rolled over our cabins and swallowed everything beyond a few meters of visibility. I stepped outside and heard faint whispering echoing between trees, repeating names I could not recognize. The forest felt alive and listening to every breath we took. Elena saw movement between trees in footage we recorded earlier that evening during a rival inspection. At first we assumed it was wildlife, but the shape was too tall and unnatural to be human. Every frame showing it became corrupted with static distortion. Marcus insisted we begin filming immediately, believing we had finally found real paranormal evidence worth documenting. We entered the forest at midnight with flashlights cutting weak beams through suffocating fog. The deeper we went, the quieter everything became unnaturally still. We discovered wooden crosses hanging from branches, each carved with names and old dates stretching back decades. Some names looked scratched out violently, as if someone tried to erase their existence. Elena felt sick reading them aloud. A distant scream echoed through the forest, and Marcus ran toward it without hesitation or fear. We followed reluctantly through dense fog that seemed to move around us like breathing walls. My flashlight briefly showed a human silhouette before it vanished. We reached an abandoned ranger station leaning crookedly in the middle of the forest clearing. The door slowly opened on its own, revealing darkness that felt heavier than normal. A sign nailed above it read, "The Ledger knows your name." Inside the station, dust floated through flashlight beams and rotten wood creaked beneath our steps. Something metallic scraped across the floor deeper inside the building. The smell of decay mixed strangely with something sweet and unnatural. The walls were covered in dark stains that looked too fresh for such an old building. Overturned furniture and broken radios suggested something violent had happened here. Every photograph on the floor showed missing hikers. Elena found a locked cabinet hidden behind collapsed shelves in the back office. Marcus broke the lock using a crowbar while recording everything carefully. Inside were journals wrapped in leather and old newspaper clippings. The journals belonged to Ranger Arthur Vale, who disappeared inside the forest decades ago. His writings described voices beneath the ground and faceless figures walking through fog. He believed a hidden ledger trapped human souls forever. As Marcus read aloud, the station suddenly lost power even though it had none before. Flashlights flickered violently, and cold air moved through rooms like invisible hands. Heavy footsteps began pacing upstairs. We found a hallway lined with bunk rooms, filled with broken doors and scratched walls. One room showed claw marks around the handle as if someone tried escaping. Elena opened it and froze immediately. Hundreds of names covered the walls, written in dark stains that looked like dried blood. My own name appeared freshly carved near the center of the room. Marcus tried to explain it as a prank, but his voice shook. Suddenly, knocking echoed from downstairs, even though we locked the door earlier. A woman's voice begged to be let inside, sounding eerily familiar. Elena believed it sounded like her missing sister. Marcus stopped Elena from going downstairs, but the voice turned into distorted laughter. The front door exploded open, releasing fog and wind into the building. Papers flew everywhere as chaos erupted. We found Arthur Vale's journal warning that the ledger must never be opened. The forest reacts to names and feeds on fear more than anything else. Something inside was already aware of us. We returned to the forest seeking the hidden chapel mentioned in Arthur's map. The trees became twisted and unnatural, forming shapes like human suffering frozen in wood. Strange symbols covered every trunk we passed. After hours, we found stone pillars forming a circle, hidden beneath vines and roots. The ground inside felt warm despite freezing air around us. Marcus uncovered an iron hatch buried beneath soil. The hatch screamed loudly when forced open, revealing a staircase into darkness. A foul smell rose from below like rotting earth and forgotten bodies. Whispering voices echoed from deep underground. We descended carefully through narrow tunnels lined with bones and ancient carvings. Water dripped constantly from ceilings, forming small pools on uneven stone. The deeper we went, the more alive the darkness felt. At the bottom, we found a massive underground chapel with broken statues and chained altar. The air felt heavy, as if something was watching from everywhere at once. A cursed leather ledger rested on the altar. Marcus approached the ledger with excitement while recording every detail obsessively. The chains around it moved slightly as if breathing. Elena hesitated, but the book called to us silently. The ledger contained thousands of names each, with descriptions of horrifying deaths. Some entries were centuries old, while others looked freshly written. The pages turned on their own. Marcus turned a page and froze as new names appeared, including ours. Elena's name appeared first, followed by mine and Marcus's. The ink was still wet. The chapel shook violently as whispers erupted from every direction. Shadow figures emerged between statues, forming human-like shapes of darkness. Their faces were hollow and constantly shifting. Marcus slammed the book shut, but the whispers only grew louder. Chains around the altar snapped one by one with explosive force. Something below the floor began waking. A deep growl echoed through the chamber, shaking dust from the ceiling. Elena grabbed my arm while shadow figures circled us slowly. The air felt suffocating and alive. One figure rushed forward, then disappeared inches from Marcus's face. His camera dropped and shattered on stone floor. A hidden tunnel appeared behind broken walls. We ran into the tunnel as creatures followed silently behind us. The passage twisted downward through roots that pulsed like veins. Soft crying echoed ahead. The tunnel opened into a cavern filled with black water and hanging chains. Bones covered the ground, and lanterns burned with blue flames. A giant upside-down tree grew from the ceiling. Faces inside the tree bark screamed silently as roots moved like fingers. Elena recognized them from missing person files. Marcus found tags with names carved into wood. Elena and my names appeared on hanging tags beside other missing victims. Black water rose slowly around our feet. A face in the tree whispered the forest was hungry. It was. Elena revealed her sister once found the same underground chapel years ago. She sent warnings before disappearing completely into the forest. The ledger was never meant to be opened. Marcus admitted he had been here before and made a bargain with something below. He survived by offering other people to the forest. We were replacements. The cavern filled with screaming, drowned figures beneath black water. They reached upward with pale hands trying to grab us. Elena saw her sister among them. Shadow figures entered the cavern, walking on water without disturbing it. The roots tightened above us like living traps. Escape routes began collapsing. We fled into a tunnel lined with carvings of sacrifice rituals. Priests were shown feeding books into fire beneath the forest. The ledger was feeding something ancient. Elena realized the ledger was not a prison, but a feeding system. Fear and guilt strengthened the entity beneath Black Forest. We had activated it. Marcus's camera turned on, showing footage of us sleeping while a shadow watched. Then it revealed Marcus making a deal with the entity. Everything was planned. Roots burst through walls, dragging Marcus screaming into darkness. His voice turned into laughter as he disappeared. The forest took him. We found another chamber with giant furnace and rivers of fire below stone bridges. The ledger rested on a pedestal surrounded by bones. It was waiting. Elena's name appeared fully written in the ledger again with exact sunrise time. The entity demanded a final soul. The forest was closing. Marcus returned transformed into a creature made of roots and human faces. He no longer controlled himself. The entity was inside him. Elena prepared to destroy the ledger using fire beneath the cavern. She believed it was the only way to stop the curse. Time was running out. Marcus attacked us under the entity's control with inhuman strength. I fought him while Elena reached the ledger. Everything was collapsing. Elena threw the ledger into the furnace just as the cavern shook violently. Screams erupted from every direction. The entity began dying. The creature made of Marcus and roots began breaking apart in flames. Souls trapped inside were released in waves of light. The cavern filled with screams and relief. Elena's sister appeared among freed souls, smiling peacefully. Arthur Vale stood beside her. They dissolved into light. The cavern collapsed while fire consumed everything beneath the forest. Marcus's body fell lifeless after transformation ended. Silence followed. Elena and I escaped through collapsing tunnels, filled with ash and burning roots. The forest groaned like a dying beast. Something still moved beneath. We reached the chapel where the altar was destroyed completely. Shadows were gone and silence returned. Morning light entered cracks above. A final page appeared in the ledger even after destruction. My name was written clearly in black ink. The curse was not over. The forest whispered again beneath the chapel floor. Something survived the fire deep underground. Elena realized it was still feeding. We ran toward the exit as forest grew unnaturally still. No animals or wind remained. Only silence watched us. Roots twitched beneath soil even after destruction. The forest was healing itself. It was alive. We reached surface and saw sunlight for the first time in days, but relief felt wrong. Something followed. Elena collapsed from exhaustion while I looked back at forest edge. Shadows moved between trees again. It was not over. A whisper called my name from deep inside the forest. The same voice from ledger. It was waiting. Black Forest stood silent, but watching like a living organism. The trees felt like eyes. The curse remained. I realized the ledger was gone, but memory remained inside the forest. Names cannot be erased, only transferred. Elena said we should never speak of what we saw again. But speaking already made it real. The forest listens. We walked away without looking back, but footprints followed us longer than expected. Something invisible walked behind us. Always. At night I still hear whispers repeating my name, sometimes from walls, sometimes from dreams, sometimes outside. Eleanor refuses to return to normal life after Black Forest. She sees her sister in reflections. The forest never left her. Marcus's disappearance was never officially recorded. It is as if he never existed, but we remember. I found scratches on my wall forming unknown symbols again. They match the forest markings. It is calling. Every map of Black Forest now shows new paths that did not exist before. The forest expands, quietly. I burned everything related to the investigation, but ash formed names again. The ledger exists in another form. Somewhere. Elena believes the entity is not dead but displaced. It needs a new host. A new forest. Strange fog appears near my house every night now. It moves like it remembers me. Watching. I hear footsteps outside even when alone inside locked rooms. They stop when I stop breathing, waiting. Sometimes I see Marcus standing at the edge of darkness, smiling without eyes. But he vanishes when I look again. Black Forest is no longer a place on map, but a memory that spreads. Like infection. Like curse. Elena left town, suddenly leaving behind only a note saying it is not finished. I fear she returned to forest. The ledger's final page still appears in my dreams, writing my name endlessly. It never stops. Ever. I understand now the forest does not kill. It records. It remembers everything. And memory is more permanent than death itself inside Black Forest. Nothing is truly gone. Sometimes I wake up covered in dirt I never touched. It smells like the forest, inside my room. The whispering has become constant now, even during daylight hours. It is learning my habits, watching. I tried leaving the city, but fog followed me across roads. Distance does not matter anymore. It connects. Every mirror now shows trees behind me instead of my reflection. The forest is replacing me. Slowly. I think I am already part of the ledger in ways I cannot understand. My name is just beginning. Black Forest does not end. It only expands through those who survive it, through those who remember it. If you are reading this, then you already know its name. That is how it begins. Always. And somewhere beneath roots and stone, the ledger is still writing, waiting for the next name, yours. The forest is silent again now, but silence is never empty here. It is listening, always listening.